Hey, what's up, YouTube? So welcome to part two of my 2018 NBA mock draft. In this video, I'm going to be covering picks 15 through 30. Again, no second round, no trade. So without further ado, let's get right into it. The 15th pick in the NBA draft, the Washington Wizards are on the clock. And when I look at the Wizards here, they were a team that severely underachieved the Mayas last season. I think they could use additional wing scoring to help out Otto Porter Jr., Bradley Beal, and John Wall, an entire trio right there. So looking at this pick and who's available, I think the best pick for them at this point in the draft would be Kevin Knox, small forward out of Kentucky. Now, Knox, he's a guy that can score in a variety of different ways. That can help a much needed boost to the bench. Where Kelly Oubre, he's coming up on a contract year soon, so you're not really sure if they want to fork over a bunch of money to keep him in the fold. You might want to replace him at some point. And Knox, he's a guy that he's got a very nice frame and decent upside. He's not the best athlete necessarily, but he's a guy that can play either the 3 or the 4. He's 6'9". He's got a nice build to his game. He can bulk up just a little bit more, but really, when you look at Knox, he's a guy that's going to be able to score in a lot of different ways. Either as a catch-and-shoot guy, off the dribble. He has a really nice floater game. Really does a good job of moving off the ball in terms of using screens in a variety of different ways. Very nice in terms of that aspect of the game. Again, he's not the most elite athlete in that sense, but the defensive end will kind of be a struggle for him early on, I think, in his career. But Kevin Knox, there is some upside there to be a kind of a really good scorer for them. And he can contribute right away off the bench for the Wizards and really help them make a push to really help their team get better in the Eastern Conference and the Eastern Conference playoff picture. Moving on to number 16, the Phoenix Suns are on the clock. And when you look at the Phoenix Suns here, they have pretty much every single one of their positions filled in terms of young guys to kind of build around. They traded for Elfrid Payton. They already had Devin Booker, who's a stud already. Josh Jackson last year they drafted, who looks like he's going to be a pretty nice player for them. They drafted DeAndre Ayton earlier in this mock draft. And between Dragan Bender and Marquise Chris, they can kind of hope that one of those two will kind of pan out the power forward position. So here, I think they're going to go with the guy with maybe the highest upside at this point in the draft. And that's a guy like a Zaire Smith out of Texas Tech. He's kind of a point guard / shooting guard hybrid there. But Smith, when you look at him as a prospect, he's really an athletic freak, still figuring out how to play the NBA game. Definitely more of an athlete than basketball player at this point in his development. But I think he's a guy that can contribute right away in terms of the defensive side of the ball. But again, he's extremely raw offensively. It's going to take a lot of time to really develop and find a position, find a role on this team. But I feel like with the Suns, like I said, they really have a lot of their positions covered in terms of looking long term. They're in rebuild phase still, so they can be patient, I feel like, and bank on his upside while he develops his offensive game just a little bit. So I think that'll be a smart pick for the Phoenix Suns to kind of take a chance on a guy with really high upside when we look at Zaire Smith and his athleticism. Moving on to 17, the Milwaukee Bucks are on the clock. And the Bucks, they're a team where Giannis Antetokounmpo and Chris Middleton, they're really the only scoring threats and really outside threats. When we look at Middleton, especially in terms of shooting the 3-ball last season for them, it really hampered them in the playoffs against the Celtics because they just weren't able to make enough shots against their defense. So the Bucks, they really need some shooting from the perimeter. And I think the guy that fits the bill perfectly for them would be Kevin Huerter out of Maryland, shooting guard. Huerter, he's one of the best pure shooters in the draft, and maybe even the best shooter in terms of just being a pure spot-up shooter. He also has pretty solid size and length when you look at him at 6'7", which the Bucks, they really do covet that in their players. They love versatile players that can guard multiple positions. And Huerter, while I'm really unsure whether he's going to be a great defensive player, I think he's a guy that will be decent at best, passable at best, but he adds so much in terms of being an offensive value to this team where they really need some other guys that can shoot and score the ball besides just Giannis Antetokounmpo and Chris Middleton, because you don't know if you're going to re-sign Jabari Parker. Eric Bledsoe didn't really work out for them last season when they traded for him midway through the year. So here he's a guy who can come off the bench right away and be a nice shooter off the bench for them to really help space the floor for Giannis, who needs space because he's just not a really good shooter. He needs space to operate to get to the lane. So that's what Huerter's going to provide for the Milwaukee Bucks here. Moving on to 18, the San Antonio Spurs are on the clock. After having, a disappointing year in terms of the fact that Kawhi Leonard was injured. He now wants out of San Antonio at this point. So they're really unsure where they're going to go in the future here. But the San Antonio Spurs, they are the best in the NBA when it comes to getting good value later in the draft, later in the first round, in the second round. And for me, they need to find a eventual replacement for Manu Ginobili, who's at some point he's going to retire. I mean, he's like 40 years old at this point. He's still going strong, but eventually you just have to figure he's going to retire. And I think a really good player to kind of fit that role, maybe not fully replace him, but be a guy that can kind of fill in for his place when he does eventually retire. Dante DiVincenzo out of Villanova. I think he would fit the bill absolutely perfectly. And when you look at DiVincenzo, he has great athleticism, and he plays with tremendous energy on both sides of the floor. We really saw that in the NCAA tournament where he was the best player for Villanova down the stretch last season. He was really just he just dominated games for them, coming off the bench as well. So he would have no problem stepping in and be a guy that can come in off the bench. And he can play a variety of roles, I think, for the San Antonio Spurs and really be a perfect fit for the Spurs system. He can play either guard spot. He needs to tighten up his handle a little bit so he can create more for others. And he needs to have a more consistent shot. But he definitely has shown that he definitely has a really good, nice-looking stroke. He's athletic. He competes on both sides of the floor. He's not afraid to really stick his head in there and make a play, get down and dirty, and be a really gritty, tough player for you. Hustles a lot. So DiVincenzo, I feel like the Spurs would absolutely fall in love with him if he was available to them. So I think that's a really nice pick for the Spurs. And maybe he can one day be an eventual replacement for Manu Ginobili. Again, Dante DiVincenzo, he was best as a six-man from Villanova. Maybe he can kind of fill that eventual role for the San Antonio Spurs going down the line. Moving on to 19, the Atlanta Hawks are now on the clock. And when you look at the Atlanta Hawks, Dennis Schroeder, he isn't really guaranteed to be a long-term option for them at the point guard position. They're really not committed to him past, this next season, really, or they could trade him at any time. They're not really committed to re-signing him at some point. So I think getting either a point guard or to build around for the future, or even just to get a backup point guard at this point, and Aaron Holiday out of UCLA would be a very nice move for them. And when you look at Holiday, he's undersized, but he can at least be a rotational piece, I think, on a winning team. Holiday, his brother Drew Holiday, and man, just all the family lines working out for them, man. They have a nice basketball family going for them. And Holiday, he's a scoring first point guard out of UCLA, but he does have some playmaking ability, averaged 5.8 assists last season. So he'll be a guy that can run your offense efficiently. He can get buckets for you off the bench. He probably won't be a starter, I think, in the NBA, but he definitely has a role, I think, in the NBA, being a backup point guard that can run the offense for you, get some buckets for you, make plays for others. And again, he's a little bit undersized, so the defense will just be a huge issue for him in the NBA. But he does have value in that he will be a solid point guard off the bench for you, I think, for a very long time. He's pretty athletic as well. So Aaron Holiday to the Hawks, I think that's a very nice fit for him there. Moving on to 20, the Minnesota Timberwolves are now on the clock. And when you look at the Timberwolves last season, even though they have Tom Thibodeau as their head coach and running the basketball operations side of it, you would think they would be a very good defensive team, especially adding Jimmy Butler in the trade last season. Andrew Wiggins, he's a long, athletic guy in the wing. And then Karl Anthony Towns protecting the rim. You'd think you'd have a very nice defense there. But for whatever reason, the Timberwolves just never figured out their defenses last season. And they just need to improve that if they're going to take the next step in the Western Conference. So for me, getting a guy like Troy Brown out of Oregon, who can be a very versatile defender for them on the wing. He's 6'7", got pretty nice length and strength already. There's not as much upside with him, but I think Tom Thibodeau is going to look for a guy that can contribute right away for his team, and that's what Troy Brown's going to offer. He's going to come in, be a very nice defensive player for you right away. And I think he would just fit in coming off the bench where he can give Jimmy Butler and Andrew Wiggins a little bit of a break here and there because, Jimmy Butler and Andrew Wiggins, because Tom Thibodeau loves to run his starters high minutes, those guys are going to need to get a break defensively once in a while. And Troy Brown, he's going to be able to kind of be able to do that, I think, right away stepping into the NBA. Moving on to 21, the Utah Jazz are now on the clock. When we look at the Utah Jazz, I think they need another player that can create their own shot, particularly coming off the bench. You have Ricky Rubio there, who's very nice at creating play for others. Obviously, Donovan Mitchell, who was just an absolute stud last season. The steal of the draft, if you ask me. But I think they can go with a guy like a Jerome Robinson out of Boston College. And when you look at Robinson, he's a guy that can be a very valuable scorer off the bench right away, really complimenting Donovan Mitchell. Because when you look at it, Jerome Robinson, he can score in a variety of ways, but he's also a very good shooter when he shot the three ball at a 42% clip last season, which is a very good number. So he can play off the ball, he can play with the ball in his hands, he can create his own shot, and he can do a variety of different things for the Utah Jazz in their offense where they love to run a motion offense, but he can also create off the bounce as well. So that's why I like Jerome Robinson to the Utah Jazz. He can come in off the bench where you're not sure Dante Exum is really going to be that guy for you, can create for you off the bench. Jerome Robinson can potentially be that guy, I think, for the Utah Jazz. And then moving on to the number 22 pick, my Chicago Bulls are back on the clock. They got this pick from the New Orleans Pelicans in the Nikola Mirotic trade. And really, this pick is pretty obvious for me at this point. Chandler Hutchinson out of Boise State. It's already been leaked that the Bulls promised Hutchinson that they will draft him if he ends up falling to them there. And while some of this may be misconstrued as just the Bulls trying to just put it out there to mess with other teams on draft night, I think GarPax really are stupid enough to let their draft plans get out to the public. I would not put that past them. But with that said, it's not like Hutchinson is a bad player. I feel like Hutchinson, he's a guy who can be a nice rotational player for you. However, again, he doesn't really have a high upside, but he can play the small forward, maybe even some small ball 4 in some different lineups here. And he does have the ability to score with and without the ball, which I really like about him. Defensively, he's a guy that will compete, but he's not going to be necessarily an elite guy on that side of the floor. His value will come offensively where he can make plays for others here and there. He can score the ball. He can drive to the lane. He can shoot from the three-point line. He can just do a variety of different things on the offense. And now I mean, look at this team with the Bulls where in my mock draft they would have Michael Porter Jr. and Chandler Hutchinson, while Porter, he's more of a high-risk, low reward type of guy where you're not really sure if he's going to be kind of a boom or bust guy. Hutchinson, I think, will be a very safe player for them. And they really address that wing position now with 2 players in the fold that both kind of provide different type of skill sets, I think, to their offense and to their team as a whole. So moving on to 23, the Indiana Pacers are now on the clock. And when I look at the Pacers, they've shown in the past that with guys like Lance Stevenson that they are not afraid to take a chance on controversial players. And you guys know where I might be going with this year. Grayson Allen out of Duke, I think he's going to be drafted by the Pacers. And when I look at Allen here, he needs to tighten up his ball handling just a little bit more to be more of an on-ball playmaker as a point guard at the next level. But I think he's be playing more of a shooting guard type role anyway. But I think he may be a capable backup at both the 1 or the 2 at the next level in the NBA. I don't think he's got starter potential. They already have Victor Oladipo there, so, I mean, he's definitely not going to be starting there for a long time. But Grayson Allen, when you look at him as a prospect, the athleticism does create some upside as well to where you think he could be a very nice 6-man for this Indiana Pacers team. And like I said, they've shown with guys like Lance Stevenson where they're not afraid to take on a guy who, the rest of the media might not might be a little bit risky when it comes to dealing with the media and with on the court at antics, which Grayson Allen, he seems to love to trip everyone just every other game, it seems like, while Lance Stevenson likes to blow in LeBron's ear every time they match up. So they're not afraid to kind of deal with the noise there, so to speak. So Grayson Allen, I think he would fit the Pacers pretty well. I think he'd actually be a very nice player for the Pacers overall once they do eventually move on from Lance Stevenson as he's getting a little bit older, I think. So moving on to 24, the Portland Trailblazers are now on the clock. And when you look at the Blazers, they need help along the perimeter defensively. It's a big glaring need, I think, for this team. And we really saw this against the New Orleans Pelicans, where Rajon Rondo was able to do whatever he wanted against their guards, and Jrue Holiday just looked like an absolute superstar against them. So for me, the guy that would really make the perfect sense here would be DeAnthony Melton out of USC. And while Melton doesn't have really the most high upside that you'd want from a point guard or a point guard, 2 guard, whatever you want to call him. Melton, he's a tough-minded defensive guard that's going to get up into you defensively. And while he's not going to be able to create his own offense for the Portland Trailblazers in terms of his fit here, they already have guys like Damian Lillard, CJ McCollum, guys that can already create their own shot and create shots for others with ease. So they don't really have a problem with that. So getting a guy that can shut down the other team's point guards and shooting guards would be a huge plus, I think, for them coming off the bench. And that's what Melton's going to provide to this team going forward if they do end up drafting him here. So I think that would be a nice spot for the Blazers to take a chance on a player like that there. Moving on to 25, the Los Angeles Lakers are now on the clock. And when I look at the Lakers here, they're a team that's looking to get LeBron and Paul George in free agency. They might trade for Kawhi Leonard at some point in this offseason. So with this pick, they can go with either a guy that can contribute right away or a guy with such a high upside that maybe they can stash him for a couple seasons and have him develop on the bench. And then eventually he can really break out at some point and be a nice player for them. And the guy that I think would be a nice fit for them here would be Hamidou Diallo out of Kentucky. And when I look at Diallo, I think I'm a lot higher on him than most draft scouts and experts are at this point. But I think this Lakers would definitely see him taking a chance here Diallo, he's a guy that has great athletic upside. He did have a disappointing year at Kentucky, but all the physical tools are right there. He's raw. He needs development. But I think eventually Diallo could be a guy that could be an absolute stud at some point. Like I said, he's raw, so it's going to take a lot of time. But everything is there. He's got a nice-looking stroke. He can drive to the basket. He's not afraid to finish in traffic. It's just a matter of just getting the basketball IQ part down and really, getting his handle down, getting his fundamentals down, and all that stuff. So the Lakers, whichever direction they decide to go in the offseason when it comes to signing free agents, I think getting a high upside guy like Diallo would be a nice fit for them at this point in the draft. And then when I look at the 26th pick, the Philadelphia 76ers on the clock, and really when you look at the 76ers, there really isn't any huge glaring need. Right now, it's just trying to get guys to kind of fit what you want to do as a team. So I feel like the 76ers can take another chance on a player with some really good length and defensive versatility. And they look like a guy like Keita Bates-Diop out of Ohio State. He's not an elite athlete necessarily, but he is a tough-minded defensive player, and I think he can contribute right away in terms of being a 3-and-D type of guy, kind of similar to Robert Covington, but kind of that mold of player where Covington, he's not the greatest athlete necessarily, but because of his length and toughness on the defensive side of the ball, combine that with his shooting stroke, he's really had a nice role for this 76ers team over the past couple of seasons, really a big part of their core. And while Bates-Diop doesn't really have Covington's upside necessarily, I don't think he's going to be as good as Covington. He's kind of a similar type of player where he can come off the bench, hit down the occasional spot three, and really be a pest on the defensive side of the floor, whether he's playing the 3 or the 4 in some lineups. I feel like Diop would be a nice pick for the Philadelphia 76ers this late in the first round. So that would be a nice value pick for them there. And then moving on to this 27th pick, the Boston Celtics are now on the clock. When we look at the Celtics here, they're a team that the salary cap is going to become a huge issue for them coming up. They had to sign Marcus Smart this upcoming summer. Gordon Hayward, Kyrie Irving, those guys are getting paid massive contracts. Al Horford's getting paid massive contract. And they're going to have to really decide what they have to do with Terry Rozier at some point because he had a nice playoffs for them last season. But are you sure you want to commit a lot of long-term money to him? I'm not really sure. So for me, I think the Boston Celtics with this pick will go with Jalen Brunson out of Villanova. I mean, look at Brunson here. He's a very safe player in my eyes because he's a guy that can come in and contribute right away for you. He doesn't have a ton of upside, but Brunson, I think he's one of the safer players in the draft to at least be a nice, solid contributor because Brunson, he has the ability to be a very versatile team-first type of player offensively. When you look at he can shoot from the outside, he can spot up, he can create plays for others here and there. He does a nice job of making sure that the offense is set up and setting up different players and different plays on different packages for the offense there. He can post up a little bit. He's just a very smart player overall. It really comes down to the fact that he doesn't have elite athleticism, so that really limits his upside. And defensively, you're not really sure whether he can keep up with some of the elite point guards in the league. But he's going to be asked to come off the bench with this team and really just be a solid player for them coming off the bench that can provide them about 10 to 12 minutes a game. And I think that'll be a nice role, I think, for Brunson. And he can eventually replace Terry Rozier, I feel like, at some point. So moving on to 28, the Golden State Warriors are on the clock. And with the Warriors here, obviously they're the best team in the NBA. They're star-studded. They have 4 of the top 20 to 25 players in the NBA. 2 of the top 5, we look at Stephen Curry and Kevin Durant. But they really need to shore up their bench. We really saw that in the playoffs last season, particularly against the Rockets when Andre Iguodala got injured. Their bench really was a weakness for this team. So they need to get some guys that can come in and contribute right away, particularly at the guard spot. They don't really have a backup guard, besides maybe Sean Livingston, who's kind of a hybrid player because he's 6'7" and can guard multiple spots anyway. He's not really a true point guard in that sense. But I feel like getting a guy like Josh Okogie out of Georgia Tech, when I look at him here, he's a very versatile defensive player that can guard either guard spot. And if his shot does develop, it is a weakness of his game so far, but he could be a valuable 3-and-D player once his shot does come to develop a little bit. And he's not going to be asked to create his own shot for the Warriors. He's just going to come in and be a guy that can play alongside either a Curry or Klay Thompson or Kevin Durant, really spot up around the perimeter and just focuses energy on playing tough defense on the opposing team's guards so that Curry doesn't really have to expend so much energy on that side of the floor, and he can just be effective on the offensive side of the floor. I think that would be a very nice pick for the Warriors, and it would really help shore up their bench just a little bit so they can make another championship run this upcoming season. And then moving on to 29, the Brooklyn Nets. When you look at the Brooklyn Nets here, They're a team that did not try to really tank last season because they didn't own their own first round pick. But the Nets, in terms of needs, they need some perimeter scoring and shooting overall to kind of add to this roster. So when I look at this team and when I look at who's available, I think a guy like Zanan Musa from Europe would be a guy that would be a nice chance for this team to take. He's a bit of a risk in that he's not the most athletic guy overall. You're not sure what you're going to get from him defensively. And his play style is very inefficient and kind of reckless, and he's kind of a selfish player in terms of he loves the jack-up shots from downtown. But I feel like the Nets at this point in the draft, they can take a chance on a guy like Musa, who is intriguing in a lot of different aspects. He's a very streaky scorer. He's a very confident scorer, and the Nets need a guy that's not afraid to fill it up from the outside. He does have potential, and I think he would be a good value at this point in the draft, and he would definitely be worth the risk, I think, we're taking here. Musa, he's a guy that, he's intriguing to a lot of different teams. He might go a little bit higher than this, but the way the board fell here, I think the Nets would be very ecstatic to have him at this point in the draft. So moving on to the last pick in the first round, the Atlanta Hawks are now on the clock at the 30 spot. And when I look at this pick here, the Hawks, I feel like they can take a chance on a guy because they're in a rebuilding mode. They don't really need a guy that can contribute right away. I feel like they can take a guy with really high upside and just hopefully develop him for the long term. And I think a guy like Anthony Simons, who foregoed his college season last year, but he does have high upside. So he's really coming out of high school. You don't really know what you're going to get out of him. But his athleticism and his pure size at the position, at the shooting guard spot, makes it an intriguing talent, I think, for the Atlanta Hawks. And they can afford to take a chance here. Again, it's the last pick in the first round. Why not go for it, I think? And if you can develop into a nice player for them overall, that would be a nice pick going forward into the future. So with that pick, that concludes my 2018 NBA draft mock draft. What do you guys think, though? Give me your thoughts in the comment section below. Are you excited for the NBA draft? I know I am. I can't wait for it to get started, especially as a Bulls fan. I can't wait to see how Garpax is going to screw it up. That's just my negative Bulls fans thinking coming through, though. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Give me your thoughts on some of my picks here. And if you want to give me your first-round mock draft in the comment section below, please do it. I'd like to see what you guys are thinking there. Thanks, guys, for watching. Please leave a like and subscribe for more videos such as this. And, yeah, yet again, thanks, guys, for watching.